Have it muted. There we go.
We good?
It's unmuted. That's on me.
Wow.
Tonight,
All right, we have audio.
it wouldn't be an episode without some technical difficulties within the first 30 seconds. Dylan, who are you tonight?
I'm Gobble Gobble Dylan.
Double gobble?
It was better when they couldn't hear you.
I
It
know.
was.
Uh,
I enjoyed it more.
Gobble Gobble. That's how I said it.
Gentlemen, how we doing?
great.
Thanksgiving is here. Can you believe it already? I mean, it's the end of the damn year.
This year flew by.
This year
crazy.
flew by. I'm doing projects at work, and I'm just like, wait, what? I gotta. Oh my god! Now I have all these time. People are taking time off. Can't get anything done.
I feel that way too.
Deadlines are crunching. I'm like, oh.
I feel that way too when I do arts and crafts.
Me too.
So you
Yeah.
mean by project, right?
I built it. There's actually a lot to talk about tonight. There's a little. I kind of want to get into this subject that we were just talking about because I didn't have it on my list here. But Avatar. How hyped are you guys?
0. Actually, like negative.
Yeah,
I'm not negative hype.
I think that's exactly. That's what we've iterated on the podcast. To be honest, it's been.
I think if anything, I'm excited to see it. Like more so to see the technical achievement of it because I am.
Of water.
I'm. There's been so much examples of poor CGI lately that it might be nice to just see something that really just knocks your socks off CGI wise.
Yeah. And I mean,
I think I'll definitely see it, but it's not like one of those things where I'm like counting down the days, you know?
I'm definitely on Kyle's side there. I've been into Corridor Digital, been watching the visual effect artists react videos, and it's been really interesting, but like learning that water is something that's really hard to simulate, and like they did like a little reaction to the Avatar trailer and kind of broke down like some of the scenes, and
It looks incredible.
It's impressive, the water effects that are fake. You know, it's fake water, but it looks
It's like
so
90% fake. The whole movie, it's insane, but it looks like they zoomed in on the one person's face, Neytiri, is that her name? And you can like see like the peach fuzz on her cheeks and like the little like scars that she might have and like just like things that you don't really think about, but like what makes someone look human or in this case
alien.
But so on that side of things, yes, I think that'll be nice and refreshing because we haven't seen a whole lot of that. But like story wise, and I don't know. I thought the first one was good, but it was also a very self-contained story. You don't need a sequel. Like
Unobtainium.
Unobtainium. Like what a lame name for.
I've never seen the first one.
You what?
You're lying to me.
No, I went to the theaters to see it, but
And what happened?
kissed my girlfriend at the time for the entire film.
Wow.
It's a long film.
It was a very long film.
It
It was the high school days. Here we are 10 years later, and I'm not excited for this one either.
maybe you should at least watch it.
Yeah, I mean
I understand
a good movie.
it's a good movie because I think 10 years ago, like the visual fidelity of it, like
It still
wow.
holds up.
It's
Yeah.
the Holy Grail, right?
Yeah.
And this one is going to be, you know, I don't know if it's that we've seen a lot of bad CGI. I just wonder if like we've just been so spoiled with like big budget CGI over the years that like
A lot of the big budget CGI in the last year has been bad, though.
Yeah.
is it? Yeah, it is. It has been bad, but like 10 years ago, like or 5 years ago, we would have been like, yeah, it's pretty good, you know. But we're
True, but like
our taste have changed.
like the first Iron Man looked
know.
better than a lot of stuff.
I agree.
Now, like
Yeah.
look at I was watching. I might have been a Corridor video where they're breaking down some of the best CGI in film history. Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End with Davy Jones, that had better CGI than some stuff that's released now. That movie came out in 2007. There's this part where the Flying Dutchman is going underwater, and you can see his little tentacles wrap up to grab his hat so it doesn't fly off his head when they're going submerging. Like, it's crazy how good it looked. And I don't know what it is, but
wasn't that the most expensive movie to make of all time?
maybe at that time.
At that time, maybe
No,
Avatar 2
not
is now
at World's
beaten it.
End. The next Pirates after that was.
Okay.
Which everyone kind of forgot about that one. So it's kind of funny that was the
most expensive
yeah.
one.
Which do you think the studios like Warner Brothers or like one of the big producers of these movies? Do you think that they are the ones that like fully fund? Because you almost have to create like for animation. I'm sure I don't know anything about it. Maybe you guys do. You have to create almost like a game engine for these animations, right? Like you have to have like physics and art assets, and you're creating these like worlds. And I would imagine it functions very similar to like game development.
So kind of, yeah, there's different engines. I would definitely recommend, if you're at all interested in this, Corridor Digital. That's where I learned a lot of this stuff, is I've just been binging it. But other like visual effects company,
Digital?
Corridor
I like
Digital,
that. All right.
they make their own like visual effects skits, and then they also do like visual effects, reacts.
Yeah, they have like a mix of educational videos, but also entertainment as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But basically, from what I've learned from them is these visual effects studios, they create their own engines for specific things. Like, I don't remember which one, but one is really good. They were really good at water and particle physics. And so they created an engine that can help simulate water or any type of particle. And so it is a lot like a video game, but they have to design those engines, and not always, it doesn't seem like it's as collaborative as like the gaming industry with Unreal. I believe it's exclusive to that.
Well, a lot of these
Studio.
animation companies, they have like their technology is like copyrighted, and only they can do it.
Yeah.
And so like if you see like, this digital animation was put together by Skylight or whatever.
Weta.
Yeah,
is a
like
big one.
whatever big one. I know that LucasArts has a company that does it as well, and they're pretty big. They do a lot of stuff as well. But then you also, if you go under that, it's like this did animation, this did VFX, this did VFX. It's because they contract out these people because they can't use their
They
technology.
can't do it all.
They're not allowed to legally. So they'll like spearhead the VFX, but then they'll contract out these people that are just specific to one thing. And like this person, nobody makes a cape wave the way this company does. We're gonna hire them to do this portion of Superman.
That's so wild.
It's not just like one engine does the whole thing.
Yeah, not like Unreal.
It's just kind of interesting because I feel like, I see a lot of like, there's a ton of animations obviously in like video games. And I feel like some of them are quite good, and so it almost begs the question. Well, but here's the thing. Here's the difference though, right? Like video games is not augmented reality. It's basically, it's an entire virtual world that you're generating at any given time. Maybe the difficulty comes when you have a recorded scene, such as the video feed that people are seeing now, and then you overlaid, like, my hand was on fire. Now
Yeah.
you all of a sudden you have to map out my hand and get it, like there's a lot more nuance
One of the
to
biggest struggles they always talk about is when they try to mix CG with real footage.
that. Yeah.
It's lighting. And it's huge.
Oh
Like
my
you're trying
God,
to
that
match
makes
the
sense.
lighting so that it looks like it actually would.
Dude, that's exactly like one of the biggest. I used to do a lot of Photoshop when I was younger, and I would do like my grandma was always like asking me to like, hey, I took this family photo, but I want to add this person into it or whatever. And that was always the hardest thing to control for, was the lighting, not so much the resolution stuff. You could kind of fake it, but the lighting on the person's face, the way that they would stick out like a sore thumb.
It's such a standout
Yeah.
if they have different lighting on them.
Well, and think about that too, like even audio. Like you can hear it in movies or even like TV shows especially, or like lower budget stuff. When they go and like crop out like a natural audio setting like this and then go and record something to like a clip later on, they're like, "Oh, you didn't say that quite correctly. We'll just dub in the correct audio or whatever." It
can
never
always tell.
sounds the same.
No.
It's hard to recreate the exact, like, because there's
Although
all the nuance of the room.
Avengers Endgame, Tony Stark, the line he says at the end, that was a reshoot.
Really?
Yeah, but it wasn't. They just placed the audio on.
I
the
love you
scene.
3000.
No,
No.
I
am
Iron
Iron
Man.
Man.
Oh, we'll
That
phrase
whole
that.
scene was reshot.
Yeah.
It wasn't
So they
just
brought
the
everybody
audio
back
was put
in.
in.
Oh, okay. I
He
thought
didn't
was-
want to say that, I guess. He was like, it's too cheesy, but they convinced him. And he did it.
That's a iconic line.
Yeah, I'm glad that they convinced him to do it.
He did a good job of that movie.
And now
Just
he's
that one.
Lex Luthor.
Yeah, just only that one.
Yeah, and apparently he's Lex Luthor now.
No. So yeah, I mean, Kyle, you were saying before this, like it has to gross more than.
Yeah, so we saw a quick little blurb on Twitter where they're saying Avatar 2 has to gross more than the third or fourth highest grossing film in order to make money.
That's insane.
That's crazy. What is the fourth highest grossing film right now?
No Way Home, Spider-Man: No Way Home is the third. Oh wait, no, that's just movie times. I don't want to see that.
So it has to make, let's just say
Close to $2 billion.
Yeah.
to make money.
That's
nuts.
absolutely insane to me. Ugh. Well, I mean, Kyle thinks it's easily going to do over $1 billion.
The hype is a weird conundrum to me,
I think it'll make $1 billion.
but there is hype
at
behind
least.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do not understand it, but because I've always just been interested in Avatar. I guess the first one was all right, and the story was all right, but it's nothing new. The coolest part about it was the technology at the time.
Yeah, it's Dances with Wolves
In
It's
space.
the exact same story.
Yeah,
So much so that I think he's come out and said it's an homage to that film because it's literally that film.
so
in
now
space.
what's next?
It's basically Cars. That's what happens in Cars.
Cars?
Yeah, he has to go help the the small
it's Cars
radiator
2 now.
springs and then be on them.
It's Cars 2 now.
No. There's always. That's the thing, like with that. So I never watched it, but I understood its pull. Like again, the graphics, people like wanted to watch it for that, but the story to me, it wasn't earth shattering.
Yeah, it's borderline like fantasy with how like incredible the world is and how like inviting it would feel to like be a part of that culture and stuff. So I think that's what people are like about it. But the story is, I mean, we say it dances with wolves, and I mean that's been done like it feels like hundreds of times. Where
Cars, Last Samurai.
like it's bad guy goes to
captured.
good guys, gets captured,
Becomes part of the culture.
becomes part of the culture, and then defends said culture against his former like allies. Like that's really all it is.
Dude,
And then that one dude somehow is coming. That's what I don't understand. There's some people that died in the first one that are gonna be in this
Wasn't
next one.
Last of the Mohicans, was that also same thing?
I haven't seen that forever.
It's
yeah.
been a long time.
I think it's I would say it's close.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look that up.
The main topic I wanted to discuss tonight was a video that I linked to you guys. I don't know if you had a chance to. Did you have a chance to watch
Yes.
it? You did.
I sure did.
So I
Honestly,
want to.
gotta add Billy first. I don't like Asmongold. I watched the video and I was like, I don't like this dude.
Yeah, you don't have to like to do it. I thought the conversation was interesting.
Yeah.
I like Asmongold because he's my kind of toxic. I have come across a million of those types of people playing online video games, especially MMOs. And I always like someone that's really, really edgy and like toxic because you're going to learn a lot from them because like they just have played the game more than you. And so like they're going to remind you that they know more than you and they're going to teach you a lot. And he's like that with World of Warcraft. So I also like I like a lot of his takes on things. But specifically, we're not talking about Asmongold here. This is a conversation in one of the he does like these React videos where he sort of watches other people's content and it's cheap content for him because he doesn't have to do any work other than React. But there's this tweet from Velociraptor that I'll read here. It's called the whole conversation is around why Elden Ring is in the category for best narrative. And at the time we sort of scoffed at like, best narrative, and we kind of laughed and pushed through it. But I think this video sort of opened it up to more of a discussion about like narrative versus lore, and it made a decent argument, I think, to have its place. But then there's also some very strong counter arguments. So I'll read the tweet here from Velociraptor. So it's called. It says, "Lore is great. Do more lore. Just don't subsist on a diet of lore when it comes to narrative. Narrative is everything that's used to tell stories, and I find a narrative that just uses mountains of lore boring. Sorry." And I thought that was interesting because I want to get into that conversation of lore and storytelling and narrative, because I think, I think our initial reactions to Elden Ring being into the conversation were best narrative. Like, we were kind of all shocked that it was up there. I think they've kind of found their niche in a way to deliver a narrative, and they do it through, as the video sort of goes on to describe, through like world building and through like boss fights and cutscenes and things like that. And even though you're not necessarily like a main character in the story, so to speak, like the world is sort of transforming and you're just sort of along the journey. You're not like playing as that person, really. You don't have any interaction with the world. You're just affecting it. It is kind of interesting to see it unfold, and it does in some way lean on lore to tell a story. And so is that a narrative? Is that something that should win category for best narrative? Do you prefer that type of storytelling? Now that we've played many, many games that have done, like from Software, that have done this and done it well, and obviously you can go and watch lore videos from a bunch of different people and get a bunch of different perspectives on this. So I'm just curious as to your guys' thought on the use of lore when it comes to narrative versus like you have a God of War, which is like a very narrative driven, there's not much, I guess, if you want to go into like Norse mythology, there's a lot of lore there as well. But in the games, what's portrayed is really just like the linear narrative that's trying to be told. So just curious as to your guys' perspective.
I think Elden Ring is a very lore-heavy game. I disagree with that one tweet in that, that could be boring. I find that very, like, enthralling. I love lore-heavy games. Yeah. I remember in Skyrim, I spent just, like, hours once just reading all the books. I love lore-heavy things, but I don't think it's the same thing as narrative. Narrative on Elden Ring is extremely light. And lore and narrative need to be separately defined, and because of that, not that I think this takes away from the game, I just don't think that it has a place as best narrative. That's really how I feel about it.
Do you wish, and we'll get to Dylan here in a second, but do you wish that if Elden Ring had a much more of a narrative-driven side to it, would it take away from the game? Would it add to the game?
Yeah, I wouldn't want that in the game.
Yeah,
what I would, if I saw a very narrative-driven Elden Ring like thing, I would much rather see that in like an anime or something.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily want that in the game.
Yeah.
The game is fine how it is.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I would almost say I don't like it being put in the narrative-driven category. It should have gone in another category, maybe like lore-rich.
World building.
Something that fits the game more. Because, like Kyle was saying, it's not a narrative game. I love the lore in it, and it was an amazing time to go through and learn the lore and build that world. But I don't think you can translate that to it being best narrative.
If you have to construct and create the narrative in your imagination based on what you know about the lore, that doesn't count. Like, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. In fact, I think that's some of its charm is the theory crafting and all that stuff. But it's just, there's a place for that, and it's a different thing. It's not like, Uncharted where like the narrative is right in your face. It's a blockbuster movie that you're playing. Elden Ring, I can't tell how many people have probably beat it that have no idea what the fuck is going on.
I don't
Yeah.
think anyone still to this day really, has an idea of what the fuck is going on, because you could watch, and the video lays out, like you could literally watch 5 different content creators giving their take on one specific boss fight or one specific world element or whatever.
I could see
and there's 5 different perspectives or 5 different ideas, because you're going off of sort of assumptions and what you know, and you're trying to piece things together, and a lot of them are reaches. You're like, oh, that kind of would make sense, that why this would be that. And so you kind of have to make these jumps, and you kind of fit your narrative to the lore, which is very interesting and compelling to me. And that's one of the reasons why I like the games, because I'm not a narrative, like I don't get psyched up really about narratives and stuff, especially in a game. And I like these types of games because you go right in and you're just ripping. You know what I mean? You're just talking about, or you're just fighting. You're going in and you're looting and you're exploring the world, and you're not doing a lot of heavy dialogue stuff. So
So you would really like Breath of the Wild.
is that, well, there's a lot of like side quests and stuff like that, right? Where you have to.
There's like you're just thrown in. You have no
Breath
clue.
of the Wild is. That's why a lot of people have compared, even though it's not a fair comparison, but that's why a lot of people have compared Elden Ring to Breath of the Wild, is because their approach to story and that is very similar.
I guess I'll have to buy a Nintendo.
Yeah.
But so my question then, leading from this, because I think we all agree, I still don't think it should win best narrative, because I don't think it is. It's not a narrative story.
It should be its
is a
own
lore.
category, like lore, world building.
Yes, and I can deeply appreciate it for what that is. Deeply, because it does feel like a lore-rich world. There is no doubt about it. Everything has its own identity. So my question to you guys is that one of the reasons why you think you like stories like Mass Effect so much, where you have a strong narrative as well as a strong lore? Because Mass Effect, there's a ton of lore that gets built up. You can sit there and learn about a lot of different races and cultures. You can read all the dialogue on like these distant planets that you're stealing mining resources from, and like you can become completely engrossed in all the different cultures. Like I think of those big, super soft, nice guys, like the rock guys, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, you can learn a lot about those guys and explore. There's not a lot to go on that, but like over the course of the games, you understand them. Like there's a lot of lore and identity built around that world, but then they also fit a very great narrative experience within that. Do you think that that's where matches are made in heaven in terms of games that you guys prefer?
So I think it's a precise mixture of that, because I think a game that is too lore heavy, too much, and it's not optional is I don't think I would like that. Like I didn't go in and read all the codex in Mass Effect.
Right.
I didn't, but I do enjoy learning about the lore, and like Elden Ring, it's not shoved down your throat, the lore, and so you're interested to look yourself. So I think as long as it's optional and it's a good mixture of not too much. I'm trying to think. I know there's been games where there's too much lore to the point that I'm just like, what? Like Kingdom Hearts.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
you're right.
No, that's too much to the point that I don't. I'm pushed off the game because I'm like, I don't even want to start to try to understand what the heck is going on in this game with the lore. So I think it's the precise mix of those two elements.
I agree. I think too lore heavy can be a little dangerous, because then at that point you're drifting away from gaming, and you're reading. And I'm just, I'm putting it in layman's terms, I guess. But what I think that Elden Ring has that Mass Effect doesn't have, that we're not really considering, is gameplay. That's a huge part of it as well. So Mass Effect for me hits the sweet spot for lore and narrative, but gameplay is nothing to write home about, but that's enough for me to still love the game. Elden Ring is lore gameplay. And so
Is the whole Trinity then Star Wars the old
so
Republic?
Wow, that gameplay is not great on that game either. A good game that hits all three for me lore, narrative, and gameplay. And this isn't even because of the game. It's just because of the universe it's set in. Jedi Fallen Order. It has an amazing narrative.
Yeah.
It has the lore of Star Wars, and it's a Souls-like, and it plays really well. So that's actually the most sweet spot game I've ever played.
Interesting.
It doesn't mean it's like my favorite game of all time, but I can make an argument to
triangle.
put it pretty high on my list because of that.
So now we've been focusing on games. Let me ask the same question, but with film in mind, because I'll explain, like Lord of the Rings. I think that is a perfect balance between lore and narrative, because that is a deeply, deeply rich world. And the way that they handle that is the opening 10 minutes. Is Galadriel talking about the world, the history of the wars, and the creation of the rings, and what's been happening to the rings over the last few thousand years. And she goes and sort of spells out, here's what you need to know. And then boom, the narrative kicks off, and you're in the Shire, and it's all happy-go-lucky, and everything's beautiful. And it's like a really awesome example of, this shit's going to be heavy. There's a lot to pay attention to. Let's create the world. And they do it in a very like fascinating way that doesn't just like, oh fuck, I'm overwhelmed. You know, they don't like start throwing names at you that all sound the same. Like they did a very good job of getting you introduced to the deep lore of this world, what's going on, where we stand today, and then the narrative kicks off of, in my opinion, one of the greatest stories ever told. How do you think with film? Obviously, there's not a gameplay element. How do you think a film, like, let's take a film that, you know, maybe some Norse-based film like Thor or whatever, but that's so loose on it.
MCU's Thor.
Thor Ragnarok.
God, the Norse mythology is so good in Thor
Or
Ragnarok.
like, let's go off
What's
with
that
Clash
movie?
of Titans or something.
That's not Norse mythology.
Greek.
That's Greek.
Or well, yeah, no, I'm just saying with something with a lot of lore.
Okay.
How would you like? Do you want movies that have like this sort of historical war chest of lore that like you can tap into and pull out of, and it's like deeply interesting, or do you want more of like maybe a Quentin Tarantino movie that is everything unfolds during the movie and there's not like a lot of lore there, it's just heavy narrative? I'm curious as to what you guys think.
I lean both. I'd say sometimes I want the Quentin Tarantino. I probably lean more towards the lore, but it has to be handled correctly. And by that, it has to respect the lore that it's, you know, in your example, if it's based on like gods or like, in, you know, mythology, it has to respect the mythology while also using new cool ideas or something to get me interested. Because I know that mythology, you know, from popular culture, and plus I loved that as a kid. I loved mythology, so but it has to have a mix of, I'd say, both, kind of like I was saying with the narrative and the gaming, is has to be good optional lore mixed with good stories. I think as far as a movie, you need the main story of the movie to be, it doesn't even have to be perfect, but it has to be good enough that the audience is interested enough to want to learn more about the lore, right? Like Star Wars, it's a simple story about a kid who becomes
Star Wars
the
is a
chosen
king
one.
example.
Yeah, but the lore behind it, you know, it's just good enough. Adds these like, oh, lightsaber, what's that? That you start to dig in and you're like, oh, this is actually pretty good.
That's a flawless example, because A New Hope comes out, like I've gone back and watched that. The story's like basic and average. There's
I'm the
not,
chosen one.
Yeah, exactly. It's not much going on there. But then you think of the lore of that world that they create, and then like all the fan fiction that it inspires, and like people had never seen. All of a sudden, it's this whole heavy feeling thing. Like, I mean, I would love to see a count, like how many different species and races and stuff like that we get exposed to in A New Hope.
A lot.
A lot. And like these different planets and worlds, like it was deep lore, but a very, very simple narrative. And obviously that worked.
Yeah.
You know, I think for me, I like both. I don't want to say that, I ignore one or the other. But I think I fall in love more with the type of movies that are more the Quentin Tarantino route, where like, the Django Unchained or Inglourious Basterds, where you're sort of watching and you have no idea where the stories might, or Pulp Fiction's a great example of what you're gonna fucking walk into, and then you see that is it Pulp Fiction with the rape scene in it?
Like which part? The with
That
like
big
the-
dude.
yeah, the gimp.
Yeah.
Like yeah, that's Pulp Fiction.
That one, I had to actually close my eyes. I don't think I've ever actually had to watch that scene all in my life. That was so intense for me. But like, you don't know what you're gonna walk into.
I
that
literally like
shit. You have no idea you're about to get hit with that in that movie.
yeah. I to this day, no matter what movie that guy's in, I always think about that scene for just a little bit. Not
Dude.
even like, not even a long time, but just enough to be like,
Damn.
like,
Huh.
yeah, movies are different for me. I find myself being able to enjoy all types.
Yeah.
If it's very lore heavy, I can get really into that, but I also really appreciate like the one and done type movies where everything's self-contained. And some of my most favorite movies in the world have like really no explanation for a lot of the stuff, but the story itself is just really good. And so movies is different than games for me. I think gaming, the reason why I need the meat, and not always, but some of my more favorite games is because it's a very lore/narrative rich game, is because it's a more intimate experience. You're not observing as an outsider. You're partaking in this adventure. So you as a person, if you're viewing, a Quentin Tarantino movie, you can appreciate it and watch it and be like, oh, that was amazing. But if you're one of the characters in a Quentin Tarantino movie, you're going to need to know a little bit more about what's going on, what you're doing, And so I think that's what the difference is for me.
That's interesting. Which do you think is more immersive, movie or games?
Games.
Gaming, 100% gaming. You're partaking in the narrative.
Yeah.
First person. I mean, that's
for
immersion.
For me, I have to I think there's a set as console boys. How is it easy for you to if you're sitting 10 feet away from your TV and you're kind of just relaxing on the couch or whatever? Is it easy to get pulled into a game?
Yeah.
Really?
You think it's not?
I find myself having difficulty now that I've got my couch set up.
It's probably because it takes you so long to set up a PC.
Okay, what? Not that I've played really narrative heavy games on the couch or recently. That's not been the case, but I find myself not getting pulled in when I'm at that distance, and I'm only probably 9 feet from my screen. But when I'm at especially with the ultra wide monitor,
You're basically sitting in the monitor.
you're engrossed in that environment. You feel like that character.
Yeah.
I think it's just adapting to what you have.
I think that's just a function thing, like what you're used to. I think if you gamed on your TV
Over time, I would adapt.
over time, you'd adapt to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think anybody could.
I honestly, and I know this is going to seem stupid, if I'm playing a scary movie or a scary game, obviously you're going to be shitting your pants with a scary game because it's way more immersive. But for me, narrative heavy stuff, especially if there's audio pauses where I have to make a choice, that is immersion breaking for me.
Where you have to
Like
Make a
massive.
Yeah,
choice.
if I have to stop and make choose a list of choices to say something, to me that kind of it takes you out of the moment. Versus when I'm watching a movie and I'm watching real time emotions and reactions and dialogue, there's something about that my brain can just click in, and especially a really good movie, some of the scenes in Good Will Hunting. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. I am just fucking laser locked and dialed in, and I don't know if I've ever achieved that level of focus or connection with like a character in a game that I was playing. Now I could feel like I'm getting shot or I'm getting stabbed, like because I'm immersed into this world. Like I could feel the emotions of that stuff. But
stabbed.
yeah, well, yeah, not literally, but like I could feel the weight of that stuff, but not. I don't know if it's because like the games that you like with Mass Effect. Every time I had to make an active decision on what I was going to say or how my response was going to be, or just I guess maybe the limited camera angles or of like what it would be like of me engaging with this person or like I don't know. I don't feel like I'm as locked in as I do get with a film sometimes. I feel like gaming can probably get you there more consistently. Like not every film is going to get me there. There's very few. But I feel like if you can identify with a film really, really well and you're locked in, I think that peak that you get, that connection that you have with that film is more than anything I've experienced with gaming. And is it the opposite for you guys?
It's not the opposite. I have achieved that in movies. I've ascended.
I am him.
No, I've achieved that, and there's plenty of movies where like you feel like you're holding your breath the whole time, and you just like once it's over, you're like, oh my god, I forgot to breathe.
Yeah.
That happens all the time. But I also achieve that pretty frequently in gaming as well. Perfect example of a game that does that to me every time I play it, even though I know like what's happening is
Cyberpunk.
No. Detroit Become Human. The interrogation scene. There's a part where you're interrogating this robot, trying to figure out why he killed his master. And it's like a 5-minute thing where the choices are rapid fire and you're going back and forth. And depending on how you have the conversation, he'll either like confess to everything, he'll have like a nervous breakdown and just destroy his own head on the counter. Or like he'll attack you and he ends up getting shot. But like the dialogue, it's quick, it's fast, it goes back and forth. You say something and then the whole time you're watching like a health meter, or not a health meter, but like
Stress meter.
a stress meter that goes back and forth of how stressed the robot is depending on how he's going to react to you. And then playing that part and getting it to that perfect stress level, so for he'll confess everything. That's an example of the type of thing where I'm like, oh my God, that was intense and I can breathe now. But that game has a lot of those.
Yeah. I think of the scene in Saving Private Ryan, not the opening, but the one of the ones towards the end where he yells at the wall. He's like, Apum, because he thinks his buddy's bringing up ammo. And he doesn't get a response. So he shoots the wall and he thinks he killed the guy. And you see a guy fall down and then there's blood pooling in. And then bullets come into the room. Have you seen Saving Private Ryan? And bullets come into the room.
Saving Private Ryan?
Yeah. And then one guy gets hit in the
Spoilers, by
neck.
the way.
Yeah.
The one guy gets hit in
man.
the neck and he's bleeding. He's choking to death. And he's choking to death. And then while he's choking to death, one of the guys charges the room with a knife. And these two go in like have a knife battle, like of them just two men and their will to live, basically, and every strength they have, like trying to keep this knife from stabbing each other in the chest. And the final scene in that fight is basically this German guy like sweating onto this other dude and like basically telling him like, hey, be calm, as he drives this knife, and you see the fear on this actor's face of like, holy shit, I'm gonna die. Like this knife is going through me. That scene is so compelling to watch, and I'm just like laser locked in. Versus like if I'm a game, I don't know if I can fully sit back and appreciate it because I know that like I'm just thinking if that scene exactly was adapted to like a video game, I'm gonna have to do some input right to like hold back the knife or something. Click A or whatever to hold back the knife and. Or adjust here. So, like, I don't know if I could just be a participant. Like, that's the difference between film and game, right? Is you can just be like a witness versus in a game you're required to sort of step in and fill in for that role. And maybe that's the difference for me because I know
Unless you're
I'm
playing
expected.
The Quarry, the accessibility is unmatched.
Yes.
Are we still talking about that? But I don't know. Like, that scene, you guys know that scene I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It's intense, right? And I don't know if I've ever felt like that emotional or like
Yeah.
nervous about a scene like than I would in a video game, because I guess there's always like, no, if I die, I'd get a reload or whatever. I don't know. It's a weird conversation. I like both, but I think film, the peaks for me, those films that can hit that, it's more. It's higher than anything I can
think
achieve in gaming.
Can achieve that in gaming, but it's only at the end, or
Yeah.
it's at surprise moments, because
After
that's
you've built that
that's
relationship.
the element of surprise,
It's-
right? Like
yeah.
in a game, you know the main character's not going to die if you're halfway through the game, because you have halfway through the game to go. But when it's like at the end, and all of a sudden, your character dies, like Soap. That's a great example.
Yeah.
At the end of Modern Warfare, when Soap gets killed, you're like, what? What?
Yeah. I think also it depends on your brain. I think the reason that you react the way you do is the lack of control. The fact that no matter what you do as a viewer, you're not going to change what the outcome is in this instance. So you have no choice but to watch something either terrible or great happen. And
That's
I think,
a good point.
I think I think it also depends on how your brain is wired.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that you have a lack of control feeds into that adrenaline rush, if you will.
because I'm just like, I have no.
Yeah,
what's
versus
gonna
a
happen.
game, they still have those moments, but largely a lot of it is able to be controlled.
Yeah.
At least for the main protagonist. Now
Exactly to your point.
they've
right?
gotten around that, and narratives. I mean, even though I'm not a fan of what they did with the story, a good example of a game that does that is Last of Us Part 2.
And one.
And
if
one.
you think about the ending, I was
Yeah.
just gonna mention that the ending of one, when Ellie's taken the doctor, and then all of a sudden it's like, no, Joel's not gonna let that happen. Go murder him, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay,
And then he kills that doctor. You have no choice. And then that leads to all the events of Last of Us 2. I mean, characters get killed off, and there's nothing you can do about it. And you can't even kill the final boss because she's like suffered enough, and you need to break the cycle, is like what they're trying to get at here. So they, in that game, especially Last of Us Part 2, they do a lot of that, things being out of your control. And so they experiment with that in games. But I can see why one might have that effect on you over the other.
It's interesting. I feel like every time we talk about this, I learn a little more about myself. Dude, it's just like it's a great time for entertainment.
It is.
We all can admit that.
I love your whole thing about Saving Private Ryan the knife scene made me think of 1971 and one shot films, or one shot
1917?
1917.
1917.
71. I'm like, what the hippie?
Yeah.
I wasn't going to say anything, but I was like, I don't know what he's talking about. I've never seen this movie, but
1917.
That
One-
whole thing is like your nuts are in your throat.
And then especially the part with the German plane crash, and they take him out, and then the camera turns and it turns back around. He's being
And he's
stabbed.
dude,
yeah.
Oh,
that is that is weird. Why do we connect more with that than when we see jump cuts?
because you don't get a break.
One shots,
You like feel it. You
Yeah.
feel everything.
they work for all types of things. They work for comedy, they work for action, they work
Yeah.
for like intense moments like that. One of my favorite one shots is from Kingsman, the church
Yeah.
fight. It's not quite a one shot. There's like a couple breaks in it, but it's mostly one shot. That is so fucking epic. And a lot of that is to do because it never breaks focus on the guy as he's like going around slaughtering people. That's what's good about John Wick.
Yeah.
That's because it's
They don't
all
fake that.
there.
Yeah.
It's visceral. There's not jump. It's not Liam Neeson jumping a fence.
17 times.
so bad. Yeah. No, in 1917, like one of the more that was intense. And that comes up more at the beginning of the film. But when he gets to like the bell tower or something, and I think there's like a sniper, and he has to like hide in there until it goes to nighttime.
Well,
Yeah.
no, he
And then
goes
he
in
has
there
to-
and he gets shot.
Right, he gets shot.
And then he passes out, and that's like a cut because the screen goes black, and then it's nighttime when he wakes
But he got
up.
shot by like a sniper, right, or something.
He shoots the guy, and the guy shoots his helmet.
Yeah. It just like concussed him.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
of the impact.
And then it goes to nighttime, and then he's like, "Oh fuck!" And then here we
Oh,
go again.
that leads to one of my. I mean, I love that whole movie just because you're so stressed out the whole
Yes.
time.
Yeah.
I can't watch it again with my wife. I'm nervous too. It's like it's like a marathon. It's like a workout.
Yeah.
Like, do we watch this or can we just watch something that I can relax in? You know?
When he goes to the church and there's the flames and he sees the guy walk out.
Oh, in the shadows,
And
and
he
he doesn't
can't
know if
tell.
it's good.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they start shooting at him and he's running and it's like, oh God.
Damn, dude.
Another movie that gives me that same feeling.
Benedict
it's a-
Cumberbatch is in that movie.
Yeah.
I totally forgot.
It's a similar kind
And
of
Colin
movie.
Firth.
Yeah.
Colin Firth is in 1917.
He's one of the generals. All the
I've-
generals are like famous people.
I've only seen it like I only saw it once. I
I've
think.
only seen it once.
yeah. And so like I missed that. That's funny. Another movie that does that type of like adrenaline feeling is Dunkirk.
Oh, I knew you
It's
were going to say
another.
that.
It's a very similar type of movie. It's not one shot like that, but it's pretty much the same thing. The whole movie is them just trying to survive.
What's that main actor's name? Is that
Which one?
In
There's-
Dunkirk?
There's like 3 different people that it stars. It shows 3 different perspectives of the same thing.
right?
There's one group of people that are.
Harry
It's not-
Styles.
Is it really Harry Styles?
He's not the main character. He's
Oh,
like
okay.
one of
Tom
the
Hardy?
side characters. Tom Hardy is the main pilot. So there's 3 different perspectives. There's the fighter pilots, there's the people rescuing the people at sea, and then there's the group of soldiers trying to survive.
That's the one that I was
The group of
referencing.
soldiers trying to survive. I know that Harry Styles is one of them, but he's like one of the side. He's not like the main dude. But that's the same thing, where it's like the whole time it just feels like you're holding your breath, and they're constantly running from like death. It's all
Yeah.
around them. There's that part where they're in that like boat, and all of a sudden people find out they're in there. And so like they're just trying to like survive while the thing's getting shot at. And there's nowhere they can go, and then it like starts filling up.
Complete helplessness.
And then they find out that one guy is like an enemy, but he's just trying to survive too, and he doesn't speak to them the whole time. And then all of a sudden they're like, "Does he speak English?" Like, he doesn't speak English, and then they have this whole thing where they're like he's not an enemy, but he's not one of them. He's like French or something. And he doesn't speak any English, so they're like contemplating sacrificing him for like bait, and like so there's this whole moral thing.
I need to.
But
watch
maybe
that
that's
again.
just the atmosphere of like war. Maybe that's
Yeah.
wars, especially when it's depicted well. You know, not like a fucking, over the top like
Pearl Harbor.
Michael
Bay.
Yeah, Jesus, no. But like something that like feels like
One
there's real
man.
risk.
Rambo.
What is your guys' favorite war film other than the 2 that we just met? Mine's Saving Private Ryan. I don't know if
It
there's
would
any
probably be
better.
1917
Yeah.
for me.
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't know if I have a favorite.
It's
Forrest Gump.
Transformers.
Yeah, Forrest Gump.
Transformers.
Actually, Forrest Gump was pretty
good. Yeah. That one's hella sad, actually. That
Yeah.
part. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I have a favorite. I'd have to think about that before I can give you an answer. Movies are I love film, and if you ask me what my favorite movie is, you'll get if you ask me 5 times, you get 5 answers.
Yeah.
I'm not very decisive on that.
It's tough because there's so many.
No.
Yeah, it's interesting that
Lord of the Rings, that's a war film. I mean, it's the battle for Middle Earth.
you know what? Now that you put it that way, Dylan, where can people find us?
They can find us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, where you're watching us now, and also any podcast listening platform where we upload our episodes, and also come listen to us.
Yeah, for
Join
sure.
us, have fun.
Come.
Any closing
Come.
comments, Kyle?
Other than, I love you.
And with that, goodbye.
You're supposed to say it at the camera.
I love you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. Bye.